Good morning, Carroll County. It's Commissioner Ed Rothstein. It is Tuesday, March 2nd. We have an open session this morning, and then on Thursday, we will be going back into open session. As we always do, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and take a moment of silence, continuing to keep in our thoughts and prayers those that are in harm's way, those that are serving our community, both here and abroad. And with that, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And some of those unsung heroes are those serving at our hospice facility, the Dove House here in Carroll County. Their work is pretty remarkable in my view. And those that are transitioning and passing on, having the ability to do it at the Dove House, are doing it with respect and with dignity. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Dennis, with passing of your father-in-law. And this past week, my neighbor lost their dad, and another neighbor, he also passed away, both passing away at the Dove House. So the work that they are doing is just phenomenal. I just want to share that. We can go through a very quick prior to Carol. What I do want to share just very quickly is on Tuesday, March 9th, in the afternoon at 5 p.m., I will be joined by Mr. Ed Singer to talk through a webinar town hall that we're going to have about the frequently asked questions and concerns and issues dealing with COVID-19, the pandemic, the situation that we have in Carroll County, specifically dealing with the vaccines and the doses being distributed, and what is happening here in Carroll County to get us to the next steps of normalcy. So I am happy to be joined by Mr. Singer and getting the questions from the community, being upfront and answering the best we can, how we see the situation today and how we see where it's going to be going in the near future. Also on March 9th, before that, in the morning, it'll be the first step in our budget process where Mr. Zaleski will be presenting the budget for a couple hours from 10 to 12 on Tuesday, March 9th in open. And that's going to start the motion of and movement of us going through the budget for this year. With that, if anybody has anything for Priority Carol, Commissioner Boucher.
Thank you, President Rothstein. And I appreciate you mentioning Dove House. It's very special people that work there. It's a lot of compassion. It takes a special person to do that. And I know they've been under a lot of stress. Since we have spring coming and everyone's getting excited about going outdoors, I want to mention the fact that the Big Fish Contest at Piney Run Reservoir has started from March until November. Remember, there's a $1,000 prize for the largest fish and an extra $500 if you break the record. Also, if you want to get your kids outside, on March 7th between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. at the Bear Branch Nature Center will be the Hoshawa Maple Sugaring Days. You can do a guided tour to Maple Grove, and if you pre-register and pay $10, you can walk away with a pint of maple syrup and some pancake mix. So I know a lot of people with their children want to get outside and do things, so please go on the county website for Rec and Parks and see what kind of options are out there. I also want to mention something really important about the library system. It is opening on March 8th for walk-in service. So that'll be a big relief to a lot of people who want to get into the libraries. And also, if you're still not sure about going into the libraries, they have the virtual programs that you can order online, and the librarians will actually bring books to you. So there's a lot of services for you. If you're a senior citizen or disabled, they offer services to get you reading material. With that, thank you very much.
Thanks. Commissioner Frazier?
Don't have too much. Thank you for your words at the Dove House. I was just there, as you know. They're just a tremendous group there. They're very compassionate. They do a tremendous job working with the people in the late stages. It's a job I couldn't do. It would be too depressing for me. But there are people that are made for that kind of work and do a fantastic job, and I really appreciate everything that they do there. I will say I did visit the Exploration Commons. But I didn't bring my pictures. I'll bring them for Thursday, and I'll talk about it then, okay? Because I did take a few pictures, but I don't have them with me right now. So Thursday I'll remember, and we'll do that then. And that's all I have right now.
Okay. Commissioner Wance?
Just two quick things. We talk about unsung heroes. Remember to keep the unsung heroes of our public education staff. There's a lot going on behind the scenes with the nurses, the teachers, the bus drivers, the boots on the ground folks. You know, we hear what goes on at these Board of Education meetings and what's happening over with staff. And what is often forgotten and what we often don't hear from a lot of the folks there is thanking those that are dealing with the fact that a lot of kids are getting back into our schools. Agree or disagree, huge thank you needs to go out to the folks that are working behind the scenes. And they've been working, the nurses at one point, there were some sad words that were used against them by one of those folks. And it boggles my mind as to how you can do that. Bottom line here is we have to thank all those folks that are working extremely hard to make sure that the plan works. And so to all the administrators, bus drivers, cafeteria staff, nurses, everybody, teachers, everybody, I'm going to miss janitorial staff. We need to thank them as much as you can because they're doing a great job. Johnson & Johnson vaccine hit this week. And that, I hope, will be a little bit of a pressure relief valve, if you will, to the amount that we're getting. 70% efficacy rate is nothing to shake a stick at. I know it's only one dose, but I myself would take it. Bottom line, if you get a chance to take the vaccine, take it, because we're not going to get out of this until we get everybody vaccinated and get there. So I know you'll talk about that on the town hall. I might even tune in. I can't remember if that's a day for my sock drawer or not, but anyway, I might tune in that day. But just a reminder, I hope we see an uptick now in the ability for folks to be able to get their vaccine. So if you get that opportunity, do not turn it down. Get it. And I'll thank more people on Thursday.
Yep.
Thank you for letting me thank you.
Well said. And yes, we actually are getting doses of the Johnson & Johnson, I believe, being delivered today, 200 or 300 doses. So it's moving into Maryland. And so that's the third vaccine coming our way. The vaccines, wearing the masks, keeping distance, abiding by the laws that are put in place in all public facilities will all allow us to get through this healthier and sooner rather than later. So, I appreciate the words and appreciate definitely the words about the schools. Let's get right into business with Mr. Fowler, our legislative liaison. Let's hear what's happening down in Annapolis.
Good morning.
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 One of the good things is we have about 6 weeks left in the session. Just understand. That's an applause line. Yes. So we've kind of maxed out the bills at around 2,300. There may be some stragglers coming through, but we'll kind of stay right around that number. Just some observations of the session. So the current rules in place limit floor sessions to 2 hours and then allows for cleaning of the chamber. So that's pretty challenging. Some of these complex issues are going to require a lot of floor time. You've got the police reform bills. You've got some complex environmental bills. they're going to see a lot of time on the floor because these are kind of party line issues. So you're going to see the Republican caucus bringing a lot of amendments in and just extended debate. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on leadership to keep this session moving. And I think I mentioned to you before, the Senate President has already hinted that some of these bills are going to be casualties of the time limitations. So it's there. Everybody's doing the best they can under the current set of rules and challenges, but there's going to be some casualties. The budget, the hearings on both budget bills are tomorrow. There's a lot in there. We've talked about some of the challenges in there to local governments. So we'll see the DLS folks weighing in on this and trying to carry some of these issues forward in our favor. So let's talk about some of the bills, some of the more important bills. Some of these, or many of these actually, will be heard this week. The first is Senate Bill 762, and it has a cross-file, House Bill 1262. This is the Maryland Electricians Act. This has been brought forward, well, it predates my time with you. So it's been in front of the legislature for a number of sessions. It changes the way we do business in the fact that it now becomes a state licensing program rather than an individual county licensing program. And then each county will register licensees. So I have been in touch with folks in permitting, Jason Green and Mike Zapp, and they brought some of their concerns forward. Many of them are like technical issues, language issues. There still remains a question about the testing aspect of this. The bill is really unclear. In one section, it talks about the state administering tests. Then it also, in another section, talks about the local board issuing, proffering the test. So we still have some things to work out. We have a MACO representative on the work, on the work group that took this forward. So we'll be able to express our concerns through that venue and try to address that. The hearing on the Senate bill is today, and the House bill will be next week. The workmen's compensation bills, I spoke to you last week about the COVID presumptions where if someone contracts the disease, it will be presumed that they got it on the workplace. The real problem with these is they're not rebuttable. So those hearings on those three bills, House Bill 765, 1199, and 1247, variations on a theme. Obviously, the MACO and the counties are in opposition to those bills. House Bill 319, the title, Local Tax Relief for Working Families. This was a bill that was initially put forward by Anne Arundel County. They wanted to create a higher bracket. They wanted to create brackets and then create a higher tax rate. So this bill raises the rate floor for local governments from what is now 1% up to 2.25. And then it authorizes a county to establish brackets. And in those brackets, the bracket for the higher income cannot be less than that of the lower income. So one of the main things that Anne Arundel wanted to do was enable a 3.5 rate. That's been stripped out of the bill. So it did pass the House earlier this month, and the Senate cross-file is still in committee. So I assume they are waiting for the House version to come over, and then they'll work out the differences there. Senate Bill 218, this was the result of the governor's relief bill, where there was an effort to include those people who are Maryland taxpayers, but use a tax ID number. And this is typically immigrants, both documented and undocumented. The Republican caucus successfully pushed back on including that in the relief bill. And for the sake of time, because it was an emergency bill, the Democrats ceded to that and allowed the relief bill to go through without that provision. But they pledged to introduce a separate bill that would allow that. So it allows those taxpayers to qualify for the child tax credit and also earned income tax credit. So that did pass the Senate last week, and it moves on to the House now. And I suspect that will move pretty quickly. In the environmental and land use area, House Bill 127, this was a good bill for us, Maryland Paint Stewardship. So it establishes a stewardship program for the disposal of consumer paint. And the intent of the bill was to minimize local government's involvement in paint disposal. So the producers or a representative organization has to prepare and execute a plan for consumer recycling of paint. It does that by adding a fee to each container of paint. And it did have unanimous support in testimony. Both the environmentalists and the industry were both in agreement that the bill is good. I think you'll see another bill coming through, the same kind of effort around packaging, where the intent is to have the producers take responsibility for the disposal of packaging with the intent of reducing it. So this is a bill that would address that same sort of concept for paint, and certainly our public works folks are happy about that. It is a single House bill, so it goes over to the Senate, and we'll see where it goes from there. Our big environmental bill, Senate Bill 414, the Climate Solutions Now Act, that reduces greenhouse gas by 60% over 2006 levels and intends to achieve net zero by 2045. That was eventually voted out of committee. It was jointly assigned, so it goes to the other committee in the Senate, Budget and Tax. Interestingly, Maryland Department of the Environment just issued their plan, and that would achieve a 50% reduction by 2030, and the current goal is 40%. I suspect this is the result not only of something that they've been working on, but also some criticism from Senator Pinsky that the state is not taking this seriously, not moving forward on it. So that just came out in the last few days. So I suspect it will become part of the discussion as it goes to the floor. So we'll just have to keep our eye on that. And this is one of those bills that, when I mentioned earlier that they're complex and you can expect a lot of debate and amendments, I think this bill fits very neatly into that. House Bill 295 and Senate Bill 227, I mentioned these to you earlier in the session. They would revise stormwater management regulations. It would serve to update stormwater regulations every 5 years to include the latest data. As it was originally drafted, it did have the potential to impact Carroll's permits currently under review, but the bill was amended so that would not affect a permit that's currently under review. So the Senate version passed earlier last month, and the House version has been voted favorable out of committee with amendments. So that was heard yesterday, and we'll see how that went to second reader yesterday. So it will be on the schedule for the floor at some point in the near future. On the education front, House Bill 465 is another bill in what seems to be the General Assembly's effort to exert more control over a number of things that are now under the authority of the governor. So this one would change the way the state superintendent is chosen. The bill would require the consent of the Senate, which is not the case now. That person cannot be a current member of the state Board of Education or have been a member within the last year. So that did pass the House and will go over to the Senate. There's no Senate crossfile on that. And another bill I mentioned to you earlier, Senate Bill 746, is the collective bargaining for community colleges. That hearing will be this week, and the counties are obviously opposed to that. Election bills are moving. House Bill 656, which is early voting centers. This was another bill that's been favorably amended. So originally, if there was a public bus route in the county, then the early voting center had to be relocated to be within a half mile of that route. The amended version now says that if the early voting center is within a half mile of an existing bus route, then the bus needs to be to have a stop at the early voting center, which is far more sensible than I think what was initially proposed. That was passed through the subcommittee earlier, late last week. House Bill 1048 would create a permanent absentee ballot list. So the voter can request to receive an absentee ballot and then be placed on a permanent list. And for each ensuing election, they would receive that absentee ballot. There are several steps that have been included to continually refine that list. It was obviously a big concern. This was another one that went through party line in the subcommittee. So you can see some of the concerns that particularly the Republicans had in that discussion. And House Bill 655, that was the bill that initially began by a delegate from St. Mary's County. So any county that has a commissioner form of government, if they have districts, the elections must be conducted so that only the voters in that district vote for the representative for that district. There are several commissioner counties that have districts, but the votes are countywide. So this began a real discussion. The Republicans really pushed back on this. The sponsor was a Montgomery County delegate, and they cited the fact that the Montgomery County School Board has districts, but those representatives are elected countywide. So that became a real push point for them. And they were actually successful in getting the bill amended. So that includes county commissions and county school boards. So going forward now, county school boards, they have districts, they're elected by people in that district. On the public safety front, the Senate police reform package was brought to the Senate floor last Friday. Includes 8 bills, use of force, discipline, the things that we've been talking about. Those bills were pretty significantly amended in committee, particularly Senator Carter's bill, which would repeal the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights and then replace it with a disciplinary process that will be in the hands of the chiefs. That was significantly amended, much to Senator Carter's dismay and to the advocates' dismay as well. And they are now attacking the chairman and vice chair of the committee for diluting those bills, which sets up an interesting dynamic because the advocates initially sort of rejected the speaker's bill, which is more comprehensive. The Senate is a package of individual bills. On the House side, the speaker's bill is much more inclusive. They rejected that bill and really put all their eggs in Senator Carter's basket. So now I think they find themselves in an interesting position that they are not happy with either of the bills. And of course, the speaker's bill is in work sessions. In fact, there's a work session today in Judiciary Committee to start working on that bill. The SRO bills we have discussed to date have not moved. There is one that don't believe we discussed yet, House Bill 1089. This would define school security employees, and they would sort of be like SROs, but no weapons and no arrest powers. This prohibits SROs in schools or prohibits any county from forming a police force, and it diverts the 10 million that are currently aimed to support the SROs to a long list of mental health and restorative justice actions. So that hearing is tomorrow, and again, opposition by MACO, as there is on all of these changes to that SRO structure. On the technology front, Senate Bill 873 talks about cybersecurity training. It prescribes, I think, a list of 20 training programs, the frequency that counties need to provide the training, reporting back to the state, very prescriptive. The counties believe that they have a better handle on what kind of training is required and how to go about administering it. So they're pushing back on that. MACO has opposed that. That hearing is today, actually. And then on the public works side, we had two bills heard last week. The first is House Bill 1094 and Senate Bill 650. This is a work group to evaluate the establishment of a regional waste disposal facility. So it creates an MDE-led work group, which is comprised of Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Carroll, Harford, Howard, and Anne Arundel counties. It includes representatives from the Northeast Maryland Waste Disposal Authority, from Maryland Environmental Service, and several industry representatives. The intent is to study the siting, the costs of a regional facility, to make recommendations to MDE. It's prescriptive in what types of technologies cannot be considered, such as waste to energy. This was proposed by Baltimore County. And interestingly, in the hearing, Delegate Otto asked if the other counties were signed on to the bill. And there was no indication that any of the counties had weighed in, either in favor or in opposition. So Steve Lafferty, who is he's a deputy director in public work and in zoning, I believe, in the county, but he's the county's sustainability officer, Baltimore County sustainability officer, was testified on the bill. And he indicated that they did reach out to the counties, but no one was in opposition, which is technically correct. If they did not receive formal testimony, either written or oral, that would be technically correct. However, I think that Commissioner Wance did express concerns about the bill. So we're going to keep our eye on it. The Senate hearing was the same day. That question was not asked, but I have to believe that it's at least been noted in their minds. So we'll be watching that one very closely. It was followed by a bill, House Bill 1103, which is a task force to essentially perform the same function on a statewide basis. It's a typical state task force composition, representatives from the governor, from the legislature, to various state agencies. And it's going to study the issue on a statewide basis and recommend strategies, but also recommend ways to fund it. So that kind of wraps up the bills. The hearing schedules are going to start to narrow next week to allow for these extended floor sessions. So most of these bills now that I'll be talking to you are going to be more about how they're progressing through the process than being introduced. So that's what I have for you today, and I'm certainly happy to take questions or discuss.
Okay, with that, do we have any either comments, questions from my colleagues?
Well, you know I do.
Go for it.
So, a couple of things, Mike. First of all, I don't know how you sit there and watch those hearings because I attempted to do that and I was this close to putting a pencil in my eye. And then I stopped doing that because I didn't think that was
Being in
such a good
person is difficult enough. Doing it
Yeah,
virtually is.
I know. Just a couple quick comments. That House Bill 655 on the elections is an interesting bill. Essentially, the 5 counties are Garrett, St. Mary's, Charles, Calvert, and Queen Anne's. For years they've been doing their elected district-based commissioners by countywide votes. So it works for them. And the point here is, each county has their uniqueness, and they base their decisions on how they do their elected officials which is represented by that uniqueness. And for the state Democratic-led General Assembly to tell those 5 counties that they're doing it wrong just amazes me. And no one wants to push back on that. So now they've buried the school board elections in it
Right.
to make it look, all peachy now. There's an example what happens in Annapolis, and those of us that try to pay attention and look at those as much as we can, there's the perfect example of how we have got to pay attention. And that's why MACO comes into play so great. And it's also great to have people like Mike Fowler on the ground there too. I would not take my eye off of the SRO bills. That latest one that got put in, that one's worse than the ones that were put in before. So
Absolutely.
Mike's got his eye on that, and they won't give up. I mean, come on, putting people in schools that are supposed to be security people and giving them no tools to work
Right.
with.
With no
Boy,
power.
Yeah, that's
No
good.
power.
That does that make sense? Oh yeah. I'm on that train. And then finally, the work group that was put together for the solid waste. Now, as we all know, we've been talking about that lately, and let's be clear. That's not an easy subject to talk about. It's not. The trash is a problem. It's always going to be a problem, and it's very, very complicated. So with that, I want to applaud all the folks here that have been working on that, because that isn't easy. But this bill, I think, and I initially, and Mike, you mentioned it, I initially reached out to Baltimore County and told them that I wasn't, first of all, you're right, it's a technicality. I didn't say we were against it here. I merely asked questions as to what that does as it pertains to the authority that we have that's put together, because essentially that does the same thing, or it's supposed to. So we'll see where this goes. I'm not so sure that this might not be a good idea now. Although whenever you say something is MDE driven, I get a little antsy, Mike, with that, because I'm not sure I want them driving that train.
They're your regulator. It's really not an appropriate role for them. I don't believe.
So
But you've got, as you mentioned, you've got an authority that has all of these counties as members. Now, Frederick and Montgomery were not included in the bill, but they are members of the authority. So
Right.
that just seems like the most logical place to kick this off, rather than have a prescriptive group led by MDE that you may be beholden to what comes out of that work group, which may not be in each individual county's interest. So it's much wider than I think that bill
Yeah.
prescribes.
It is. I talked to one of the neighboring county executives, and not the one that you all think I talked to. This was a little bit further away. One of those counties, Frederick and Montgomery are both struggling as well. I would love to see the setting of the table by the 5, 6, 7, 8 counties in this regional area. It's almost the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, but it not quite, because it reaches out a little bit further. I would like to see all of those sit together and talk about this without all the public works people, chiming in. just to start the conversation on what the challenges are with trash in the county. So I'm going to see if I can maybe lobby some of the folks, some of our colleagues to maybe do that. But it'll be interesting to see what this bill does, because essentially that's what it's trying to do. But the problem here is insert MDE here, and the fact that they're driving it. And I'm having a little bit of
Yeah.
brain pain with that one.
Well,
So-
it's the fox in the hen house is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I applaud the effort, to be honest, but it should not be MDE's responsibility, as it says, led work group, to either facilitate or even be in a room. This group of counties, it's just like the EAGB, except for Cecil County.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
everybody except for Cecil County.
Yeah.
So obviously they're recognizing the region, which is really important.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. There's pieces of this that just make us scratch our head and say, we really don't want the fox in the hen house while we're going through this process.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, and again, that just goes and proves the point of how all of us in the region, and for that
Mhm.
matter, across the state, are struggling with what we're going to do with our trash.
Yep.
It's not easy. And if I had an answer, I doubt if I'd be sitting here. Doubt it. I'd probably be on a Caribbean island somewhere. That they're struggling with trash too, by the way. Anyway, it's not an easy fix. So we'll get there. And finally, for me, just one comment, Mike. At beginning of your report, you talked about allowing for cleaning of the chamber. Can I insert jokes here, or should I let it go?
Let it go.
Mike, I'm going to go with your.
Let it go.
All right, I'll just let it. My colleague,
Let it
Commissioner
go.
Rothstein,
Let it
is telling
go.
me to let it go, so
Nope.
I'm going to
Let it
go.
snow. Let it go. I do
On
have a
your,
question.
just on your point about starting that discussion, we shouldn't discount the fact that this may be an effort to start that discussion. You might remember sometimes legislation can kick people off the seat, so to speak. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't discount that.
Good point.
And Mike, you mentioned, or you sent us a note the other day about the upcoming agenda on BPW, the Board of Public Works, and you shared with us the Veterans House. So now what's really exciting, one, it's on the record, it's a line item within the state, within the governor's budget.
This is the one in Sykesville, right?
It's
Ed?
the one in Sykesville.
Okay.
And it is the Veterans Home in Carroll County, which will be located in Sykesville. If it passes through, which I feel optimistic, maybe guarded optimism, through the Board of Public Works, that the funding will allow for engineering and design of this 120-bed facility in Carroll County. That is I believe, a huge effort that has taken years, but we're, I'm pretty excited about it. Taking care of our veteran community here in Carroll County and in the region. Just keep your eyes on that and let us know how that goes. But I know there's
Secretary Owings did discuss that in the budget hearing. He discussed the project in the budget hearing. So that I thought that was positive too.
there's a lot of positivity that we're now recognized as the location. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Appreciate all the work that you're doing. Anything else for,
Yeah, I just want to make a quick
Please.
comment about the SRO bills that are coming in. 3 and 4 years ago, you couldn't stand up SROs quick enough in the school system because of what was going on across the country. And now that we've got them stood up and they're working, as far as I know, fantastically in Carroll County. It couldn't be a better program. And now people from other places want to strip them down and move them out and do all. It just kind of blows your mind.
It does.
I mean, why? Because we haven't had an incident in the last couple of
Right.
years. Now we don't need. No, it's not like that.
Yeah.
Maybe we haven't had an incident past couple of years because you have SROs in school now.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the reason.
Yeah.
And as might want to tweak the program, but to destroy it and throw it out and take the money away from it, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But I'll just leave it at there. It just
Yeah, you're spot on, Dennis. I will agree with you 100%. And the very people that are bringing it up to make it go away
Yep.
are the people that walk into the to the buildings in Annapolis where there are armed guards.
Yeah.
You can't get into those buildings. So make sense out of that one.
Yeah, that's 100% correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Great. Anything else?
If I
Go
may,
ahead.
Mr. Fowler, thank you very much for your work. And it's tough to stay awake through those committee hearings, so you earn your pay doing that. And I want to emphasize, I'm going to agree with my colleagues and everything they said, especially the regional waste management bill that has a tremendous impact on us and affects our policies going into the forward. I also want to mention, I really appreciate you contacting our Deputy Director Green in permits about the Electricians Act bill. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you doing that because that's the point to go to understand our position as a county on those issues. So that was very nice of you to contact him and get his input on that.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I wish I could take that credit, but they reached out to me. But for the same reasons, they are the subject matter experts and they're steeped in this. And they saw those conflicts and concerns they had. They brought them to me. We were able to start working them. So credit goes to them, I have to say.
Well, thank you very much for recognizing their initiative on that. So thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything else, hearing none, let's move on. Thanks again, Mike, to turf mowing for county buildings and parks. And we're going to have Justin and Maureen on, I believe. There's Maureen and there's Justin. Maureen, you want to start?
and
Can't hear you.
You're
Check your
muted.
gear wheel.
Can't say that enough.
Shirts, t-shirts, hats. What
Yeah.
else are we gonna do? I was gonna mask.
There you go.
Mask with check your gear wheel. I was gonna suggest that we balance the budget with those materials, but I don't know if we have to. Every little bit.
What do
helps.
you say, Maureen? Nope.
Can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah.
can.
Yes.
Go ahead, Justin.
Jeff-
I got the paper. You just want me to go with it?
Go
Sure.
for it.
All right. Bureau of Facilities, in cooperation with the Bureau of Purchasing, solicited bids for provide all labor, equipment, and materials to perform mowing services at various county-owned properties throughout Carroll County. The bids was 26 mows per season, provided each property is mowed weekly. The Bureau of Facilities recommends to award Linwood Lawn Landscape Company for the amount of $268,710 annually for the turf mowing of Carroll County buildings and parks throughout Carroll County. And with that being said, I will go on here and give a little information regarding Linwood and the project here. We are here today for a decision to award turf mowing contract to Linwood Lawn and Landscaping. Linwood Lawn is a local company that has over 20 years experience in the landscape industry. Their office is located in Eldersburg, Maryland, with a workshop located in Linwood, Maryland, right outside New Windsor. Last year, they received Carroll's Best Honorable Mention Award, and they're also a member of Carroll County's Chamber of Commerce. Linwood is currently running 2 mowing crews, but they will be adding an additional 3 crews for the FY21 mowing season. Facilities made a site visit to their workshop over in Linwood, Maryland to discuss their mowing plan for the total of 434 acres, which is going to be at 21 sites throughout Carroll County. After reviewing their executive plan and talking to their references, we feel they are qualified to handle this turf mowing contract for Carroll County. This contract will start on or about April 1st, depending on the weather, and will run until October 30th. This is going to be a total of 18 to 26 mows, and each mow will be every 7 calendar days. And with that being said, what questions may you have regarding the turf mowing bid?
I just have a quick question. It
Yes,
says for 26 mowings, but what happens like with my lawn? I mow it every week in the spring, but in summer, especially if you don't get any rain or something, there's no need to mow it. What happens if there's no need to mow? Is this the same price regardless if they mow every week or?
no, it's mowing per mow.
Okay. Gotcha.
Have we used Linwood before?
We have not, Commissioner. Last year we had Chesapeake Landscape Group had the contract for this milling bid, but Linwood is our first time using.
Well, Chesapeake's coming at, 3 times the cost of Linwood, so that's pretty dramatic, going
Yes.
from 268 to 700,000 for that type of bid. So, okay. Any other questions?
Nope, I'll make the motion that we award the contract for turf mowing for county buildings and parks to Linwood Lawn and Landscape LLC in the amount of $268,710.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
We
we
can
got
always-
4-0.
Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Let's move on to Carolyn Manor Pipe Lining. And I think Chris is on and Maureen is the strong silent type unless she has fixed her gear wheel. No, she has not. She still maintained the strong silent type. Chris, why don't you start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the Bureau of Resource Management has a program by which we work on addressing maintenance issues for the stormwater management facilities that we're responsible for around the county. This is an underground facility located just off of Hughes Shop Road in the Carolyn Manor subdivision. It's essentially a series of corrugated metal pipes that were installed 30 years ago. So they are at the end of their design life. The condition of them is not terrible, but that's the intent, is that we want to get in and line them before they become terrible and to require a much more costly repair and replacement. So we approached 3 of our term contractors that perform in situ lining of corrugated metal pipes, and 1 firm declined to bid, but we did receive 2 bids, one from Granite Inliner and one from Pleasance, and we would request permission to award this task to Granite Inliner in the amount of $67,585.
Okay, any questions, comments?
Have we used them before, Chris? Because didn't Pleasance always get the bid on these things, or am I wrong on that?
So I personally have not worked with Granite Inliner, but they are one of our term contracts. So it's very possible. I'm not familiar with the whole history, but they are a term contractor with the county, so they're approved to do this kind of work, and other agencies have used them.
Okay. I'm familiar with that property over there, and it is on a personal property. I know the folks that own
Yes.
that.
Okay.
So I'm just hopeful that they'll be able to do the work in the most respectful manner over there, because of the fact that it's on that needs to be front and center on this project to make sure that
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. As long as that's good, I'm good with it. I don't, so.
Okay.
I think you should make the motion since you
Oh,
do the
okay,
property.
motion?
All right, fine. I'll move that we award the contract for the Carolyn Manor pipelining to Granite Inliner in the amount of $67,585.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion, got a second. Any comments, discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
4-0. Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Always wonderful seeing
Thank
you, Maureen. Again, a strong silent type, but next time. Let's move on to Chris. I think you're staying on, and Tom should
I
be
am.
joining you. Is stormwater review position. Okay, either one. Acting Director, Chris, you want to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So our bureau is responsible for reviewing for various county codes. One of those relates to stormwater management. And we have had a position open since September to bring in a new resource to assist with performing those reviews because of the volume of the reviews that we've been dealing with and so on. We have not been successful to date to hire someone, and there is a desperate need for assistance in that regard. So we are asking permission to go to one of our term contractors and bring an engineer on site to assist with performing those reviews. Because this is a term contract, we have the contractual hourly rates for our consultants, and those vary slightly. what we did was we took the highest rate, which the highest billing rate for an engineer is $109 per hour. And then we assumed 600 hours for between now and the end of the fiscal year. And that's where the $65,000 budget came from. So it's very likely that the actual dollar amount will be less than that if one of the slightly cheaper engineers is the best resource for us. But we're looking to set that as an upper limit for this task.
Well, I definitely think there's a need for this. The challenge is $65,000 for 3 months or 3.5 months is a lot of money for a contractual position.
I will agree.
Yeah.
And I will also say that the reason that we haven't been able to find anybody to fill the position is because the 40-hour-week position that we are posting would pay an individual about $50,000
Right.
a year.
And I agree. And
So
yeah.
you've heard me say this a
Yep,
couple
right.
times, and I'm going to say it
Yep.
again, and you're going to hear me say it again for the next 2 months. This budget this year is going to be about people.
Yep.
We have got to get our pay grades, especially in light of the new minimum wage that's being pushed upon us. We got to get our pay salary
Salary
people
up,
to
yep.
where they need to be.
We do.
So right now we're discussing hiring a contractual, like you say, Ed,
Mhm.
a contractual position for $65,000 a year, and we can't find somebody to work for $50,000 a year. Does that make sense to anybody? Because it doesn't
So-
make any sense to me.
No.
Okay, so you kind of jumped on it a little quick.
Okay,
The
all right.
hand grenade wasn't
Okay.
thrown in the room.
Okay.
Okay,
all right.
so I do believe this is a lot of money. I'm not saying this is an over amount of money. Because I agree 100% with what you said. And this is a very important role and very important position to allow us to do the things we need to do. You know, I think, Tom, Chris, we've had this conversation, before. And I do think that bringing on contractual positions may be a solution, to get us, through some of this process. So, again, I don't disagree with what you said. I think we are, our salaries do not meet the needs that are there. I mean, we'll never get somebody for $50,000.
Yeah.
We're not going to get somebody for $75,000.
I-
It's going to be very, very difficult.
Well,
So-
I'll tell you, I had an individual that I know
Yeah.
that looked at this position.
Mhm.
He's overqualified for this position.
Right.
And he said to me, I would love to work for the county,
Mhm.
but I'm not taking at least a $20,000 cut in pay to come work for you.
It's at least. I mean, yeah. So I'm just saying that, one, if we have it budgeted and we need this, I appreciate you coming forward and, allowing us to have this conversation and get to a decision. We got to get things done. I mean, and
I think it's too high.
65,000.
Yeah.
I
For
mean,
3 months?
so
What is the actual salary for this position that we're putting this out for?
20
Do we know off the top of our head?
Yeah, I know exactly.
What is it?
$24.09 an hour.
But no, yeah, but for the full-time position.
Yeah,
How
that's
much a
what it
year?
is,
What
24
does that come
it-
to?
That comes to like 50 grand of pay,
Right.
of actual pay.
then you got-
Now, when you put the
Right, I
rest
know
of
you
it
had the
in-
benefits and all
Yeah,
that, because
but-
I'm
but-
thinking,
But I think it's 2409.
yeah,
And if you do the math, I think that's a little bit over 50,000.
yeah, all right, like 52
And
or
we're going to
something.
pay somebody 65,000 for 3 months of work.
Yeah, I
See where we're
understand.
off here?
I know, I'm almost thinking, let's take the other 15,000, throw it into the salary and then see if we can hire somebody for that price. But that doesn't include the benefits and it's not
Right.
budget session right
I
now.
know we're out
And,
of budget session right now. So
I almost thought Ted jumped in when I said that, but he didn't.
no, it's
but-
only Weaver.
It's
only
just Weaver.
So
he's wearing a traffic cone underneath his jacket. I don't know.
he might have been
Good
directing.
morning,
some
gentlemen.
traffic.
Sorry I'm late, but
He's
better
got
late
front
than
of
never.
the shower curtain now.
So I guess the pertinent question here, since yeah, that was good timing actually. Since we're on this now, I mean, I know we're close to the budget right now, but what are the ramifications of delaying this putting this position in place at this time? Does it delay projects, and et cetera? You know where I'm going with the question.
Yes.
And we
Uh,
can't.
Tom,
hear you.
Tom, you're not coming through.
Absolutely. I'll
Oh, there
I'll
you
take
are.
a stab at that, Commissioner. Yes, right now, our review,
He's having the same problem Roberta had a few weeks ago.
Okay, Tom, you're coming in very
I am
sporadic.
now. Can everybody hear me?
Sounds
Yeah.
better.
He's delayed. He said that.
You might have to switch.
Chris, why don't you go ahead and take over if you could?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Thanks,
Sure.
Tom.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is the volume of reviews that need to be done. On average, it takes about a day to do a stormwater review. On average, if you average them all out. We are seeing between 25 and 30 projects or submissions coming in a month. So we are progressively falling more and more behind. And that's why we need additional resources.
So if we would delay this for,
Could be 3 months.
it could be, you're right. I don't know that,
Yeah,
I
it's-
don't want to do that.
No.
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 But, okay, so if this is just
It's
can we look
difficult.
at this instead of a 3-month contract? Could we look at it as a month I mean, we're still going to pay out the,
Like a month-to-month kind of contract.
yeah, is that possible?
Mhm.
Instead of that,
Absolutely.
because that might be better than the lump sum of 65, maybe. It's
Right.
probably going to still be the same amount of
About
money.
$20,000.
It's prob-
But
Well,
yeah, I agree. There's one thing I want clarification because it is apples to oranges when we're talking about a full-time position to a contractual position. A $50,000 contract or $50,000 paid position, county position equates to what that the county is paying with benefits and stuff. Roberta, can you kind of give us a feel? Is that like 100,000 or what?
So since we're self-insured, it's not a direct, we don't pay, a premium per person. So
Right.
we average, or we say, just benefits, not FICA and other things that we pay for are about $17,000, $18,000 a year in addition. So we advertise this at the base rate, which is the $50,000 basically, and then we sort of negotiate up normally to about 55. So call it with all things told, in the $75,000 range with benefits. But one couple things to keep in mind. This is a not to exceed $65,000 contract, so they may or may not spend that much money, and it's not a flat for sure 65. We will continue to advertise the position in case we do find somebody out there that's interested in taking it. So that would possibly truncate the need for that 65. And also, if the commissioners did choose to make adjustments to this pay rate or to any others during the budget conversation, then that would officially take effect in July so it wouldn't be just a
Right.
couple months, it would be.
Yeah, and
Just-
I can understand that.
Yeah.
And it also leads to further ramifications too,
Mhm.
because if you raise this one, then you got to raise
Yep.
this one,
Right.
and then you're raising this one.
Right.
It's sort of like what the minimum wage is pushing us to do. Everybody's got to be adjusted accordingly.
Right.
I just have a hard time right now putting out up to $65,000 when we're so close to the budget.
Yeah.
When
I-
we
I
maybe
know. I
could
know what
make
you
some
mean.
tweaks to our salaried,
Right.
our salary scales.
Right.
And which is why will it help if we put somebody on for a month
So,
to help
yeah.
with the workload?
And-
And then
yeah.
maybe we'd be closer at that. That'll be
Mhm.
what, April. So we
Maybe
might be a
April
little closer
15th.
then.
If we
Yeah,
contract somebody now
right.
with the intent of onboarding them by March 15th through April 15th. I think the also benefit of doing that, one is we see the value over a month without spending so much, but also, you know, when we hire somebody contractually, we don't have to onboard them. There's no processes. As soon as they're on, and that's the expectation, as opposed to bringing somebody on, going through a month or two of onboarding and all this kind of stuff and meet your neighbors. This is a contractual position that we're going to give them a project, he or she a project, and they're going to do it. So you're getting more that way. Is there, you know, do you believe, Chris and Tom, I don't know if you can, if we can hear you yet or not, but that if we did a month contractual position, that you would have the ability to hire somebody and get somebody on board for that 1 month? I mean, what's your thoughts?
So I am hopeful. I mean, our intent is that we would go to our term contractors. So these are our engineering firms that do this type of work, and ask them, do you have a resource that can come and work here for whatever duration? And my would hope is that by approaching 4 or 5 of these firms, that there's at least one person out there that can come on board with us. But that's a big commitment though from an engineering firm, is they're giving up a resource for a month or 3 months or whatever it is. But it is, I mean, it's a revenue generator. So I would hope that we would be able to get a resource.
Yeah, but you also have to be realistic on our side. We've had this position open since September, I think it says. We haven't been able to hire anybody. I don't know how many bites we've had on the position at all. Realistically, from our side, we're not going to have anybody in the next 3 months that's going to apply and come on for this. And I feel the same pain that everyone else does. We're putting this much money for this short of time, and we're actually paying less per year. Like you said, Steve, we got to readjust our salary scale so we can actually hire some people in these positions. But in the meantime, this is the way it has to go, because I don't see it changing in the next 3 months. And I hate to do it, but I think it has to be done like this.
The impact of this role has such a driver on our economy in county, has such a driver on the business and economic development in our county, that the slower this goes, the slower it is to get these properties, developed. And so we are losing money as long as we continue to be slow on this. And it has nothing to do with the work that either you, Tom, or your entire teams are doing, because I'm on you a lot about that. It's just that it's an economic impact. So,
Yes.
yeah,
I don't want to pinch pennies here. That's not what I'm trying to do. But
Well, you make a very valid point.
yeah, I mean, I can't. We do this all the time, and then there'll be those out there that say, well, we should. And Dick, you've brought this up before. Maybe it's good that we source out these things. Well, I'm telling you now that this is not the case here for this one at all. If we could bring somebody on board for $65,000 or $70,000 a year, plus whatever it is, the 18 or 19 or 20,000 more, this is a no-brainer, ladies and gentlemen. It just doesn't make any sense.
Is it possible to bring somebody in that's internal from another department that would be able to do this? Not at all. Okay.
No.
No, it takes a special expertise to do this, Commissioner, and that only resides at this time within the Bureau of Resource Management. Yes.
if
If I could just real quickly, and I apologize, you can hear me now, correct?
you're good.
I'm going to speak real quick because you just don't know what's going to happen. So basically, I know it's a good bit of money. I think there's 2 things to take away from this. One, Chris did identify like the upper limit. So we will work very hard, to keep cost controls in place as far as who we bring on. And we will try to bring on someone maybe at a lower cost. It won't be a whole lot lower, but it will be lower. The second thing is we may not be able to get someone in here full time, for 5 days a week. We may have to settle for someone for 3 days or 4 days a week, depending on what the engineering firms, like Chris indicated, can accommodate for us. So I really think looking at that $65,000 number, That's not what it will end up being in 3 months. But we wanted to make sure we brought that to you as like Chris indicated, an upper limit. So I would suspect it's going to be somewhat less than that. The other thing I'd like to address is the fact that I think a month will be way too short. The reviews of these projects take months, if not years, to get through our process. And I think, if we say we're going to do it for a month, it'll be great, but I'm afraid Chris is going to be sitting back here in front of you, in a month saying, we're making good progress, but it's going to end if we stop this in a month. So, I really believe and would ask your consideration to finish out this fiscal year. The money is there based on the position, that we have that hasn't been filled. So we can accommodate some of that plus some of the other money we have in our department that can cover this. And, we've worked through budget on that. So, I would just ask, to have a little faith in us that we'll try to reduce costs and keep costs to the bare minimum on this. But it is a critically needed function at this point in time.
There's no doubt in my military mind that we do have faith in you and Chris. If you were to say, is this the priority position within your staff that is vacant?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments, questions,
Yes.
dialogue?
Mr. Devilis, thanks for chiming in. That was very important. But on the long term, for us to solve this position vacancy, what do you think would be the appropriate salary for us to offer if we can adjust in the future? Where would the salary starting point be to get a qualified candidate to meet the requirements?
I don't know if I can answer that, Commissioner, and I want to be very careful answering that because, as you heard, I think there are other ramifications to this discussion that have to be considered because it's not this position alone that you need to have this discussion about. It certainly is a lot of others, and I'm just talking within land and resource management, let alone the entire county. So I do think that you have to look at not only the actual function, but the technical expertise and all that goes along with that function, which can vary. Like as Chris was indicating, we have various reviewers, and some of their functions are more technical than others, and they require more technical expertise. So that I think there has to be a discussion about the technical expertise that goes along with functions, and that's a much broader conversation maybe than right here.
Yeah, let's
So
hold
I went
off.
around about Commissioner to say I don't feel comfortable answering you. I'm
Let's
sorry.
hold off on that until we get to the budget session at
Yeah.
least, because we can look at all different positions at that time and have a much better view of what we actually need to do.
Yeah, if you're going to ask that question, you need to ask it on a broader level.
Right.
And have our folks take a look at all the salaries across the
Right.
board. I mean, I can tell you what the gentleman who reached out to me is making to do this very same thing for an engineering firm,
Mhm.
but that doesn't really make any sense in sharing that at this point. But a broader look is certainly needed
Yes.
at the end of March when we start to jump into the
Yeah, I
circus.
think-
Like I always
I think
call it.
hearing from your human resources professionals on that would be perfect if that's what the board would like. We'll make sure that happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's time
yeah,
that we look into that and have some information by the time we get into the budget. I think it's very, very useful.
I think so too.
Okay, with that, I'll make the motion. The Board of County Commissioners approved the solicitation of a contractual stormwater reviewer with a not to exceed task limit of $65,000.
Second.
Okay, got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion on this? Really appreciate the time spent, Chris and Tom, on going through this. All in favor?
Aye.
And,
I'm voting no.
okay, we got 4-1.
That wins, I swear.
Yeah.
Next, traffic calming procedures briefing. Jeff Casaway, Doug Brown, and Chris. I see Chris, I see Doug,
Good morning.
there's,
There we go.
go for it.
Trifecta.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm going to
Morning.
kick this off, but thank you for introducing us. Joining me today, Director Jeff Castaway and Crystal Notchin, who is our Bureau Chief of Engineering and also a traffic engineer. thank you for hearing us this morning. The reason that we're before you is to provide you a briefing on the traffic calming process here in Carroll County. Now, in Carroll County, we next month will actually celebrate 15 years of having a traffic calming process. This process was started back in 2006 when there were many different things that happened prior to 2006 that caused a lot of different traffic issues, from what I'm told, within the county. And there were various processes and outcomes to determine each. Some were successful and some were not. I'd also mention that as I'm talking to you here this morning, Chris Swam, and many thanks to him, has loaded up any and all of our documents that we're going to speak about, because they all are and have been publicly accessible through the county's website. So any particular question that you may have, or if you want to see a document or dive a little deeper, we're glad to take you in that path. So we're going to start generally and talk generally about our traffic calming program, and then we are certainly glad, as always, to answer any questions specifically that you may have. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Chris for the next portion, and he's going to give you that broad overview of what our traffic calming process is. Chris?
Thank you, and good morning. Can everybody hear me? I don't need to change my... Thank you. So our experience from previous traffic calming projects and other programs identified that we needed a program that was consistent to meet the community's needs, involve the community a good bit, and make sure that every community member was able to provide input throughout the process. As Doug said, our program, along with pictures of some of our devices, are available on the Bureau of Engineering's website if you want to follow along. Our program typically starts with a request from the community in the form of a petition from the residents along a roadway or potentially a homeowners association. After we receive that petition, we'll collect current traffic data to determine how many vehicles are traveling along the roadway and the speeds of those vehicles. We'll review that traffic data and other roadway characteristics, such as the roadway length, the land use around the roadway, the presence of a school zone or significant pedestrian generator such as a playground, and sidewalk presence along the roadway. Based on the traffic data and the characteristics, we determine if the selection criterion has been met for engineering, enforcement, or education, the 3 E's of our traffic calming program. If it's determined that traffic calming devices would be appropriate, we will meet with the entire community to discuss what the traffic calming program is. Sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions. We'll talk about some of those in a few minutes. And we'll talk about the process with the community to determine which devices will be appropriate for the community. We also develop a smaller work group, about 6 or 9 persons, to work with throughout the process. We have found this initial meeting is important, as I said, to share with the community exactly what traffic calming is, the devices that are available, and the benefits and limitations of those devices, and also to dispel some common misconceptions regarding traffic calming. Traffic calming may include devices as simple as additional speed limit signs or larger speed limit signs, some as large 3 to 4 feet, the size that you would see along an interstate. Center lines, edge lines, and sometimes even double wide edge lines. Some physical devices we utilize to modify driver behavior is to require the vehicles to travel up and down over devices such as speed humps, raised intersections, or raised crosswalks. Some side-to-side devices to change driver behavior include neighborhood traffic circles, center islands, intersection bump outs, chicanes, and chokers. And sometimes we combine these devices together to work in tandem. I talked about some misconceptions, and one that we experience somewhat when we work through this process is that all vehicles, after we install traffic calming devices, will travel at very slow speeds. Unfortunately, each device has limitations along with the road users. And we have to design these devices to accommodate things like snowplow, school buses, and garbage trucks. While the person in the small sports car or the raised pickup truck traverses the traffic control device, if they desire, they can travel at higher speeds. The traffic calming device design is a balance between the roadway users, taking in consideration all the vehicles that must utilize our roadway, and always we're accommodating our emergency services vehicles along with those designs. Another misconception that we experience is that stop signs are traffic control devices. Per the Federal Highway Administration Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, stop signs should not be used to control vehicle speeds. They are used to assign the right-of-way, meaning that the side street must stop and yield to traffic on the main roadway. I would note that Federal Highway just recently released a notice of proposed amendment for updating the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which includes revising the language to state that stop signs shall not be used for speed control. One of our outcomes of our initial meeting is to develop that small group I talked about. These folks can be an HOA board, residents who volunteer. The composition of the group is completely up to the community. I had a meeting last night with a small group in the Eldersburg area, and they divided it up based on the portions of the roadway. Oh, I live down this end, I live on this end, we're all gonna represent our portion of the roadway. So after we meet with the initial meeting with that neighborhood group, we send a letter and a ballot via US mail to determine whether or not the neighborhood wants to have the county continue the traffic calming process and expend county resources now that they understand what traffic calming is and what it can and cannot do. This letter is sent by US mail to all the property owners, and they can respond to us via mail, fax, email, or they can collect the ballots. Last night they chose, I think they're going to collect all the ballots and they're going to package them up and hand deliver them to us. Again, we found this to be very important to make sure that we have input from all the residents, that everybody has an opportunity. Maybe they couldn't make the initial meeting or they weren't able to sign the original petition, but everybody is included and everybody has an opportunity to voice their opinion. If we receive our 2/3 consensus, we will continue to work with the community to develop traffic calming solutions, the solutions that will meet the needs of the community and the issues that they're seeing and things that they feel will be appropriate for their community. Not every device is appropriate for every community. So most of the time we'll develop a couple solutions for them to work through, and then the committee will develop one final option. That final option is again sent out to all the residents along the roadway via US mail, and they have the same way to respond back to us with, again, 2/3 consensus on whether or not they wish to proceed with that final option. Again, one thing that we do stress with our community, as was talked previously, is that any solution that we come up with is subject to funding. So we have to have the appropriate funding in order to implement those. And now Doug's going to talk a little bit more about our program.
Thank you, Chris. So, commissioners, as we've discussed here, and Chris gave you a very broad overview, again, all of our documents are online. I would ask Chris Swam now just to bring up the simple matrix, the one-page document that shows the entire process that we have from start to finish. It's an excellent single pager, a slick sheet. And this slick sheet, as you'll see there from Chris, goes from start to finish for every citizen, and again on our website as to how this plan carries through. Now, would I tell you that everyone is always happy with every decision? No, I would not. But I would say that I have heard from people within our communities that say, you know what, I was one of those citizens. I did not want traffic calming in our neighborhood. It ultimately came, but what they called to thank me for was the fact that we had a process. We didn't just take a stab at it. We had a process. They understood that. And they also understood that we used outside manuals and items such as what Chris mentioned earlier, which are federal regulations and other best practices to drive the decisions that we make. So that's it. Unless Director Castingway has anything to add, I turn it back over to you all for any questions that you may have specific of the policy or anything else.
Okay. Chris, take down the slide. Thanks. Jeff, did you have any comments or you good right now?
No, I'm good right now. Leave it to the board to ask any questions they may have or, direct it from this point. Thank you.
Any questions or
So-
comments?
Well, I know Dennis probably has some. I don't want
Yeah.
to jump in front of you, but
You can
Okay.
go if I have anything
There's
extra.
no
Well,
thing
yeah,
to move
okay.
somewhere.
I've been in public safety now for coming up on 47 years, which is remarkable because I'm only 48.
That's an amazing thing.
I know it's amazing. I've seen how these things work in various jurisdictions. And I think the important point here that our tremendous staff is sharing with us is the fact that you don't just willy-nilly throw either traffic or calming devices or signage or what have you at a problem without going through the correct process to do that. And we are also, and correct me, I think I heard this message, Chris and Doug, that there are, federal guidelines, state guidelines, et cetera, that gets you to where the decision needs to be made on what can or cannot go in those areas. So I think that's the most important, I think,
Right.
message that we send here. And I've seen it in other jurisdictions. I had a conversation because I hit one of those speed bumps
Mhm.
down in another jurisdiction one time, and perhaps, and I emphasize the word perhaps, I may have been going just a little bit too quickly. Okay. And I had a little issue. So I got into a conversation about calming devices and
Mhm.
speed bumps, et cetera. And I learned a lot. And that's the point here. You
Yeah.
can't just throw stuff
Right.
at
That's
things
right.
to make things work. There, I set the stage, Dennis. Go.
You said it very well. And right, the fact is, we don't just say, let's throw this down, let's put this there. We take the national and state safety institute guidelines about what to put up and what not to do. Be honest with you, I just got off the phone with someone the other night about this situation. And when I get off the phone, I'm thinking they want one thing, but what the thing they want is not recommended. And it's what I think Chris mentioned that what they wanted was stop signs. Stop signs are not to be used as traffic calming devices. Is that correct, Chris? You brought that up.
Yes, they should not be used as
Right.
speed control devices.
Right, as speed control devices. I mean, if people look at certain things, they think, well, it's just so simple. Just put this down. Well, studies have been done. Research has been put into effect. All this has to come up with these recommendations. These aren't things that are just slapped down and say, let's do this, let's do that. And everything that's been done has been done for safety reasons. There's a reason that you don't throw a stop sign just anywhere, or you don't put a speed bump or a pinching device just anywhere, because all the research has been done. And Carroll County looks at all that research and follows it. And we would be negligent in our duty if we said, the research has been done, but we're going to do this anyway. I just don't think that would be responsible of us to do that. And that's why it's so frustrating. And I have talked to a few people on the phone about this one particular situation on Sunshine Wings, bring it up. And, the fact is, we're told by the experts, this is what should be done. And if the neighborhood doesn't want it, that's fine. It doesn't have to be done this way, but what they're asking for should not be done. So I'm not here to make something worse than it is right now. I mean, if you go to the experts, when I go get my car fixed, there's some things that I fix, but I take it to a mechanic to fix the things, and I trust him to know what's best. I don't try to second guess him. Why'd you put that or screw over there? Why don't you use I don't do that. I think it shouldn't be done here. I know that's a poor analogy, but it's the only one that jumped into my mind.
No, I'll tell you, first off, great presentation. I think there's also the 3 C's, the community, the consistency, and the clarity. And the clarity has to do with the processes and expectations. When I ran the installation, when I ran Fort Meade, I had the pleasure of walking around with tools in the back, and I can take down any sign I wanted, because I own the installation. Actually, it was me and the DPW, and we go around and, mistakes were made, and you have to take signs down or put speed bumps and traffic circles in the right positions. My concern is that again, if you look at this community, consistency, and clarity, community is first. And Chris, you shared that by getting out there. I think sometimes mistakes are made. Now, the question is, are we going to also own up to some of those mistakes? And I heard you up front saying stop signs are not to be used for this traffic calming process. If stop signs have been put in places to create this traffic calming process, should we also relook at those and say, is there changes that need to be made? And I ask you to do that because I know there are some in the community, because we were very quick to throw up a sign somewhere. And I want to be careful about that, because what goes in one direction has also got to go in the other. And it's for the community needs. So community consistency, if we're doing it in one place, we've got to be sure we're doing it in other places, and the clarity of and I really do applaud the process. So other comments or questions? Direction?
No, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's good. My only other question would be, I would guess that there would be law enforcement ramifications as a result of putting signage in areas that are not recommended for signage. And I would think that there would be a level of responsibility that would be put onto those who enforce as a result of wrong or not called for signage, whatever that would be.
Right.
So that's a whole nother, I think, challenge here of just not throwing things, where they should be. I mean, we get into all kinds of these things. Chris, over the 6 years that I've been here, it even goes to the things where we've talked about putting up speed limits, and, people want speed limits. Well, you can't just throw a speed limit at something. There are parameters around that. And, Jake breaks. We've talked about Jake breaks because I had a couple of those in my district, and you know exactly where they are. But you can't just throw Jake breaks signage. I mean, I think the important message here again, Dennis, as you said, is that you just can't do this stuff without looking at it. And we have a good process in place, and that's what we do. So I don't want to get into a specific incident, because that's not what the agenda called for
Right.
today.
You're absolutely right.
It was an overview of what we do here,
Right.
which I think was very well done. So
And-
it gives us more info.
Chris, we've been through many of these, or several of them in my district, and your process does work. I'm not always happy with it as far as the outcome, but it is a process that works very well, and I've seen it in action. And I don't always agree with you in the outcome, but you're reasonable going through it. And over a period of time, yes, your process works very well. And I think that's fantastic. And I just want to know, how fast were you going, Lance?
None of your business, Weaver. A mile over the speed limit.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, have you seen did you see the joke the time, Chris? I think I talked to you, maybe I said this one to you, about the deer crossing sign. They put deer crossing signs up, and the woman wanted to know, why in the world would you let deer cross here?
I did see that.
Obviously, the traffic cone that Commissioner Weaver is wearing today wasn't there when you were speeding, but that's a different story for a different time. Okay, gentlemen, good job. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Let's move on to the Maryland Heritage Area Grant Program. And I believe we have Joanne and Debbie Stafford. Joanne went from the Farm Museum. There you are. And Debbie, do you want to start?
Good morning, Commissioners. We are here to ask for your approval to apply for the FY22 Maryland Heritage Area Grant. These grants support Maryland heritage areas. Carroll is part of the Civil War Heritage Area. Let me go over the budget with you quickly, and then I'll have Joanne talk to you about the program. We are applying for $23,000 in state grant funding that requires a dollar-for-dollar county match. And we will provide that match with a combination of staff time, Farm Museum staff time, and the Farm Museum's Patrons Fund. There is no county general fund dollars in this project. I'll turn it over to Joanne to talk to you about the specific project and answer any questions that you might have.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
So basically this project is just to evaluate our historic textile and quilt collection. We have 99 items in the collection. We want to evaluate their historic significance and purchase some display cases and upgrade our quilt display, and then tie all this to the Carroll County Barn Quilt Trail, which, as you know, has been a very successful way to bring tourists to Carroll County. We are one of the original sites on the Barn Quilt Trail, and I did work on that project before I came here to the Farm Museum. So we think that there's a lot of collaborative relationships here. We've also talked to the Arts Council, the Public Library, Union Mills Homestead, and some of the local quilt guilds so that we could put together a slate of activities related to this exhibit when we launch it, similar to when we had the Smithsonian exhibit here, and we worked with some of those same partners and did a slate of activities over the time the traveling exhibit was here. I don't know if you have questions. I mean, we think it's a win-win. We think it's a strong application. We think it's a good application, and we like the idea of tying other entities in and also bringing people to the county for longer periods of time. We do actually have a very extensive collection that has a lot of really nice items in it. So we feel like this is a good use of this funding, and we're very hopeful for this grant.
Well, I like to state that as someone who loves history, I'm all about this. I appreciate the effort of both Debbie and Joanne for putting this together. With that said, I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the submission of the FY22 Maryland Heritage Area Grant application and accept the reward.
Second.
Second.
Okay, got a motion in a couple of seconds, although one was a bit delayed. Any discussion, comments? Seeing, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we got 5-0.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for the notice, Joanne.
Oh, thank you very much. We're hopeful. Hopefully I'll be coming back to you to let you know that we've gotten approved.
Okay.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any public comments?
I have no callers online.
No callers on the line. Anything for open admin?
I've got a couple things.
Okay, please.
It's not on the agenda for today, open admin, but do you want to bring them up or what?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd wait till third. No, I'm just kidding.
Listen, you and I are getting along today here, so. All right. I want our attorney to look at a couple things, and it pertains to our positions. So I know that many of them require, or a couple of them probably require some state legislative moves, but I want to set the stage now so that we're well prepared for the next legislative session that's coming up, and this will give us plenty of time to do that. And another one's probably going to be a little bit more challenging, but I want to get the answers on paper so that we can look at it. And I think I know what the answer is going to be, but I want to see it. So number one, I think it's high time that we put in for a pay raise for these positions. I think that these positions should at least be $50,000 for these elected positions, and I'm not so sure that it shouldn't go up to 55. But that's open for debate, and we can debate that as it gets closer. But I do want to know what the right route of travel is to begin the conversation on an increase in pay for these positions that would take effect in December of 2022. Secondly, I want us to look at term limits. Term limits were put in place here in Carroll County for 2 terms. I quite frankly think that that's not enough. I think it takes a good 2-3 years. Now, this is based on the individual, of course, but it takes a good 2-3 years to get your feet wet into these elected positions. And by the time you've done that and learned what's going on here in the county, and for some that may not even be enough time, but until you've learned that, your first 4 years are over. Your first term is over. So now you've entered into the second term. And now you're starting to use what you've learned in the first term to really try to make a difference in that second term. but you're still not going to get those things accomplished in that second term, and you're going to be hard pressed to do it. 4 years goes by in a flash. I truly think we need to look at making term limits here, and I'm all for term limits, but I think it should be 3 terms instead of 2. And again, that's open for debate, but I do think that 3 terms makes more sense. There's something to be said for experience. And I think, 12 years in these jobs, it also goes by in a flash, but I think it's more important to get those extra 4 years. So those are the 2 things that I would like to get more information on and debate them at the proper time.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing for me, and this one's going to be a tough one. I know it is, but I really want to get it in writing and have somebody dig and tell us, making these positions staggered, if you will, because I truly believe that if it would happen that you have 5 brand new elected individuals that come into this job, and put on top of that perhaps the issue of maybe a lot of senior staff below that would be leaving, and you get that influx of new people, you've completely thrown experience out the window, and that's very, very troubling for me. I truly believe that this should have been set up with staggered terms, much the way in which the school board was set up.
Mm-hmm.
Then you provide some consistency here. Now, I understand that in order to get to that process, something's got to give, because somebody would have to either serve longer, or you'd have to put somebody in. I don't know how you do that, and maybe you can't, and maybe it's something that you can't tackle. But at least I want the opportunity to look at it moving forward. I truly believe that's important here, and those are the 3 things that I would like some additional dialogue on at some point. I know we're getting ready to enter into the budget, but I think these 3 items are very important for not us. And listen, I want to be clear, because every time we talk about pay raises, you're going to have that bunch out there say, oh, well, there goes Wance asking for a raise. Wance ain't going to get the raise. Okay. Let's be clear. Ain't getting it. But for the future of this county, and for those that are going to serve in these jobs in the future, I believe these 3 things are very important. So I put that out there. Again, we don't have to debate today,
Right.
but I want these things in front of us so we can debate them and
Yeah.
At least go, not, yes, whatever. So
I think getting the appropriate staff work done, and then having it put on the agenda to have a conversation and discussion amongst us for those 3. Okay, anything else for open admin for this morning? And yes, it's still this morning. Roberta, did you have anything for open admin? Okay, what I'm going to need is a motion to adjourn. I'd like all of us to stand by after the adjournment, but motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion on the floor. A second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
That was a bit of a delay. I got a motion and a second. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
I guess.
Okay, we got 5-0.